The street committee will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Conway,
Present.
Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Murphy,
Here.
Alderman Kotar,
Here.
Alderwoman Pam Boyd,
Here.
Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Martin,
Here.
Chairman Boyd,
Present.
Alderman Moore, Alderman Bosley, 6 present, you have a quorum.
Okay. First board bill up is Board Bill 59, sponsored by Alderman Conway.
Good morning, members of the committee. Board Bill 59 proposes to raise the monthly trash fee from $11 to $14. It's a $3 per month increase. A couple of things. Right now in your communities, you're seeing us pick up the trash on Saturdays and Sundays, which we continuously run behind because our lack of operable equipment. The vast majority of our equipment was put in, even though this list says 2000, my understanding was 2003. And we'll have all of that information. The key thing is, when it comes to our budget for the budget year, which we'll finalize in Ways and Means tomorrow, we've been paying about $600,000 a year in overtime, and that number will continue to grow in order for us to pick up your refuse. The main use of these funds is for replacing the trucks on an annual basis. We'd like to replace 8 to 10 trucks every year. We also have, in the allocation that we'll give you here in a second, some of it will go for cameras and for refuse task force again. We do have a grant out of the police department to reestablish that position. I'd probably like to call Randy and Paul Payne to go over the information they have. Come on, sit up here, both of you, and then I'll sit around the corner.
Uh-oh.
And, Randy, I would just ask you to do your handout and how old the equipment is.
Yeah, if you want to just take one. Happy to.
Oh, they sent us all this, that's true.
You ready?
I don't have to make copies of your handout of the allocation of where the money's going to go.
This is the cost structure.
These are young
I didn't know we
turkeys.
employed the troops.
Okay, that smaller list that you had, like,
Is that
21st.
Is that current?
I don't know. I'll find out. Go ahead, Randy.
Okay, yeah, okay. If you look at this handout, Exhibit A, that basically just outlines, the years that we purchased our trash trucks. You can see the majority of them were purchased in 2000, which puts them 17 years old. The average lifespan for a trash truck is 8 years max. So, we're 9 years over the lifespan on a lot of our vehicles. And you can take one off there, it's actually 78 now because we lost another one. If you look at Exhibit B, what I did is I went back since January and I averaged every day, basically how many trucks we start out an average day on, down. That's the non-operational. So if you look at January, an average day, we're 27 trucks down to start out our day.
Down.
Yeah, on the down list when we get to work. So you can see as you go down to May, it's pretty consistent. And open routes, we have 58 routes we run every day. This is the average number of routes that we have to leave open every day because we don't have the equipment to do all of our routes. So if you look and see how it's going, it's only going to get worse the hotter it gets. As you can see, May we averaged 16 open routes a day to start out our day out of 58 routes. I mean, that just is a trickle-down effect on our, on our employee morale. We have drivers come in, we have 7, sometimes 8 drivers that have to sit around 3-4 hours in the morning just waiting for a truck. come to work, don't have a truck to do your job, so you sit on the bench, you gotta wait 3, 4, 5 hours until somebody else gets done with their route, and then you use their truck. So, as you can see, with the number of open routes, the number of trucks down every day, like Alderman Conway said, I mean, we just keep falling farther and farther behind. That's why we're working, we worked this last holiday weekend, Memorial Day. We work every Saturday, I'm sure you see us. We work every Sunday, I'm sure you see us out there. So, a lot of drivers working 7 days a week, they're getting burnt out. And then on top of that, we can't get mechanics to come in to work on the weekends, when we work, so that just puts us farther behind. So, yeah, we need some trash trucks real bad.
And then I would ask Paul to go over what it means to the budget and what the costs are.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is the sheet that's being distributed is an illustration of our cost versus what we're actually charging for refuse collection. It's sort of a requirement that you can't charge more than what it costs. You can't charge more for a service than what it actually costs. And there's a process for actually allocating and determining what those costs are. And you can see in the first column, we've got it broken out by general fund, actual expense. This is actually based on actual expenditures FY16. Now, obviously, we're getting into FY18, so our costs will be higher, but I'm using actual costs that were incurred in FY16. Operating costs, you can see personal services, materials, supplies, and all those supporting accounts. There was a total of $15.1 million. Now, in addition to that, we have cost allocation. And what's that? That's the cost of supportive services in other words, keep the department running. So, for instance, personnel, law department. The biggest one being on there would be equipment services. As Randy mentioned, and this number keeps going up with the aging of the trucks, our cost of maintaining the equipment that we have continues to go up, and that's hitting our operating budget. That's the biggest item you see there at $2.1 million from the cost allocation. Overall cost allocation was $2.6 million. Then we also have part of the use tax expenditures, which are for neighborhood pickups there, and that's $600,000. And then a grant. A grant that's from outside funding. That's about a $50,000. So in total, we're spending about $18.4 million in refuse collection costs. Now you take out the grant, that's about $50,000. So that was about 18.3 even. Now, in addition to that, we have been spending capital funds. As you know, through your ward accounts, you've been purchasing rollouts and things like that, and that was about $1.5 million from the FY16. Also, we had that lease debt purchase of rolling stock that just recently expired, but it was a $450,000 item. And then we had other lease debt in the capital fund. Part of that was allocated for trucks. It wasn't all refuse trucks, but it was allocated. And the allocated portion of that was about $54,000. So if you add in all those capital costs, the total expenditures for refuse in FY16 were just over $20.3 million, or just under $20.3 million. Now, not all of that was residential collection. There is municipal solid waste collected by city departments and things like that, which is estimated to be about $1.4 million. So you take that out, and you end up with a total cost of residential refuse collection of $18.8 million. Now, if you compare that to our revenue sources, we do sell recyclables, and that fluctuates each year, but that's gone down in recent years. It's $128,000. And then the amount that we've billed, and again, these are billings, not collections. Collections are a little less than billing, but total bills were $14.6 million in FY16. That brings our total revenue base to $14.8 million, or $4 million less than what is actually what our actual costs are. And as I pointed out, about $1 million in additional costs aren't collected. That would actually make it $5 million if you really want to collect. You account for that as bad debt. But even conservatively, you're still way under in terms of what your revenue sources are to fund these refuse dollars.
Okay, and how much will, and I'm sorry, Paul, how much will the $3 a month raise?
$3, it's about $3 is about 3.6 million
Annual.
annually, yes.
And I'm waiting for the actual appropriation list. Do you know what those numbers are, where the 3.6 is gonna go?
I haven't seen the latest allocation. The vast majority of it is going to be trucks, for sure. I know the allocation also includes some cameras for enforcement purposes, as well as some portion for,
That's the last thing I saw.
yeah, that was, and I'm sure that they're refining that, but yeah, it was $600,000 to cover the increase in the transfer fee, which we're seeing as an operating cost. $900,000 for alley receptacles, $1.8 million for trash trucks, and $300,000 for cameras.
Sorry, what was it for trash trucks?
1.8.
1.8.
1.8.
And
Paul, can we get a copy of that, please?
Right, they're making it right now, I just don't know why they don't have it here in front of us. Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
well, who's making it?
Well, Jay and Todd, and they're both gone, but where is that?
She's
Okay, thank you. And he did say and I will add that the 900,000 for trash receptacles will be split by 28 wards, and it'll allow every alderman, here it is, I am sorry. It will allow every alderman, it'll just be split equally to have the trash containers, basically, about $30,000 a year in new receptacles for your ward in this. The cameras was an important part of the feature. We do continue to have illegal dumping in the areas along the edges of the city. So the 11th Ward, 22nd Ward, 27th.
We'd all get it.
Yeah.
everybody has.
But yeah, it's easy to sneak in from the county, get it. Plus, we've got contractors and that doing that.
Oh,
And
yes.
so, $300,000 of it will be allocated towards cameras. That is all of the information I have.
Okay, questions from the committee? Alderman Morris not here, Alderman Murphy?
Along with the cameras, does that increase any, I want to say personnel for the task force, the trash task force? Some of the biggest complaints I get is this illegal dumping, and they don't want to pay more, so we can empty it more for the illegal dumpers. They want them caught. People said they've turned in numbers, license plate numbers, nothing happens. And so out of that camera stuff, is there going to be bodies or whatever to go after it?
I will,
That was my question.
right, the chairman will recognize Mr. Walterman, he'll explain.
You want to take Randy's spot?
Randy's out of the hot seat.
Yeah.
He flew out of that seat.
I don't like that guy.
You say left.
Thank you, Chairman.
Tell everybody who you are.
Todd Walterman, the Operations Director from Air Crew Center. So I heard cameras were a deal, and we've been doing a little talking, and I talked to John McLaughlin, Sergeant McLaughlin today, and he manages, how that goes, and he has an officer now that's paid for by the JAG grant, and he works with them on the cameras. And we discussed what was needed, and Luther is the ace guy that works for him, and I talked to Luther, I said, what do we need? I said, the aldermen want to know what you need. So he needs about $100,000 to retrofit, to redo these cameras we bought in 2010. So these cameras wear out in 6-8 years, they got better equipment. So he needs $100,000 to take his tech and put new cameras in them and redo them. He wants to add one officer, a full-time officer to this thing. He says that'll give him the flexibility to really impact the neighborhoods. He said right now his hands are tied a little bit because it's a JAG guy, and the JAG guy can only do specific stuff. If he actually gets one out of general revenue, he'll have a lot of flexibility. And so that officer costs around $110,000 with benefits. And then we have about $30,000 in overtime because a lot of this action takes place after regular work hours. And then a little bit of equipment money in there. And that's how you get to the $300,000. And they were very confident with that. I pushed him to ask him if he needed another officer to make it 3. He said, no, we get 2, we get the equipment upgraded, and we will make a big dent. And those were the words out of the people that are actually on the ground. So I just wanted to speak to that 300 grand issue and kind of spread it out for you.
So the 300 grand is cameras and officers.
One additional officer and upgrading the existing cameras. Back in 2010, I believe we bought about 110 or 115 cameras, okay? And so since then, they want to take the box, which is a real good box, and all the equipment works, except they just want to replace the camera so they get a better view. Because they're 6, 7 years old now, so they have a better piece of equipment to put in the box. And that's what the 100 grand spent for.
Okay, Ty, let me make sure I'm clear. So we're looking at 4 line items right now, and you're saying it's just, you only need an additional 100,000 to what we already see,
No, no, no.
600,000 for transfer fee.
No, if you take the 300,000
Where's the 300,000 right now?
Under camera.
under
Okay, let's
cameras,
go and make
Yeah,
sure.
and you
right.
break that into 4 categories,
Gotcha.
okay? You break it into an officer, into equipment retrofitting the cameras, into a little extra equipment, $60,000 with a truck equipment, and $30,000 with the overtime. That's how you get the 300 grand broke down. And I didn't have that defined till this morning, or I would've had it on the sheet. And we can, update that for you, you know, to make it clear of how that 300 spent.
Yeah, no, that answers it very well. On the camera business, you said they're gonna retrofit cameras. Where are all these cameras?
So they haven't been using them, okay,
Okay.
so you understand the task force kind of went to bunk when the JAG money ran out, because in 13, when we did the takeover, there was some conversation with the lawyers, and we had to pay them overtime, so we expended all that money, so we went about a year with nobody doing this, so they wound up on the shelf. So in the past year, they've been gearing them up, getting them out, and doing it, and Luther has discovered that he needs to revisit the camera so he gets good, clean pictures. So it's been kind of a slow redo with only one officer. So
And
this
I-
would like kick it and put 2, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I guess so they'll determine where to put the cameras. Are these gonna be movable?
They're absolutely, they're
That's what I
portable.
wanna know.
They're back to the old like deer style camera. They got deer hunters use them in the woods to see where their deers are.
Oh.
Very similar to that. They come up with a laptop in their car and they download the data from the poles or wherever they place them in the trees.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Alderman Cole.
The 1.8 million, how many trash trucks is that?
4, 5, 7.
7
7
to
to
8,
8.
yeah, 7 to 8
7 to 8
probably.
new
And
7
then-
to 8?
And honestly, we need to weigh that out, whether we want to do some lease purchase and maybe buy, you know, a dozen or 15 the first year. And we'll have to figure that out with the capital committee, right,
Right,
Paul?
yeah.
Got it. Thank you. No further questions.
Alderman Boyd.
They asked us, so I'm fine.
There you go.
I'm fine.
Alderman Bosley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. $300,000 seems like, it's not enough to replace 100 and something cameras. From the meetings I've been having, it seemed like the cameras cost about $15,000. So with 300,000 and you're using 100,000 for a man, which leaves about 200 for cameras. Do you plan on replacing every single one of them, the hundreds?
Yeah, so I agree with you. I pushed very hard this morning on the phone conversation because they said they needed like $500 to $700 worth of equipment per camera. And I questioned that hard, so I made it 100,000. I actually gave them a little more money than what they asked for. But they said it was that simple. That, you know, these cameras we bought in 2010 were about a little over $6,000 a piece. So we spent $700,000 back in 10 to buy the box and the brains and the camera. So, you know, 90% of that is still good. They just want to get the new eyes on the camera and replace that one part in there. You know, these boxes that are in there are like bullet resistant and they strap to the thing, they're vandal resistant. So we have a device that's pretty usable there. You know, I had your same opinion, like, hey, we got an opportunity to give you more money. And they're like, no, we only need this. You give me 50 grand for these parts and I'll do it. I made it 100 grand because I thought they were short and I wanted them to be able to do their job completely.
Okay, well, I would certainly like to find out exactly which camera models we'll be using and how much each one of them costs. Just know what they're saying, but I also understand technology at the same time. I don't think $300,000 is enough to help out with all of the dumping in the city. I mean, we have a lot of dumping sites, a whole lot of them. So That just seems like, it just seems a little odd that we pay somewhere around 300,000 for about 10 cameras in our own neighborhoods.
So I think we're talking apples and oranges here. Okay, these cameras that we're talking about here are standalone, pretty much deer cameras that have no fiber hooked up to them. They have a solar panel, that they have batteries in them, and they're a self-sufficient little unit. I think you may be thinking more about our pan zoom tilt cameras and our LPR cameras that we have to put out on the intersections. And you're right, they're 25, 30 grand a snap, right off the box, you know, to get them hooked up, and they have to put switches in the fiber so they can communicate back to real time. You have a whole network that ties into them that makes them a whole lot more expensive. This is a very simple idea. I'm glad the cops are still using them, that we're not just throwing them away. Because I worked with the crew 6 years ago on finding these cameras, and this is what the police wanted at that time. So I'm just glad we can reuse them, and I don't know if you've met Luther yet, but he's very confident that this will do it, and he's our officer that's on the ground. You know, and McLaughlin's there, and he's been around, and I think he's helped all you guys out quite a bit. So that's who I'm basing this on. I'm basing it on the people that are doing the work.
I've definitely seen the cameras actually work before. I know we've personally caught 1 or 2 people in our neighborhoods some years back. So I was just, really interested. You talked about the upgrades and just what those upgrades would be. We're changing out the actual brains of the cameras and how they would work. Another question I had about the actual trash trucks. One big problem, in my ward, it's not just the trash not being picked up. It's when it is picked up, it's trash all over the ground afterwards. So is there anything worked out at all to be able to relieve that issue at the same time while we're emptying trash, having the trash around the dumpsters picked up too?
Well,
so the alleys won't look,
Right, so a couple of things. We only have one person in the trash truck. They're not allowed to
Right.
get,
Conway.
oh, okay. I did-
Wow.
Yeah. So we do not have provisions to go in and, sweep the alleys and do that neat pickup work afterwards. Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes the cans are overloaded, and sometimes people don't put it right in there, and we get mattresses leaning up against that. But that's something we're working more diligently with the bulk crew. Not that they're gonna go out there with brooms and sweep everything up, but I think they can do a little better job. And I don't know, Randy, if you wanna speak to this, you're a little tighter with operations, or?
Yeah, I mean, the way our work rules read is, if our driver services a can, he spills the trash, he's supposed to get out and clean it up.
And
But
they
if he
do.
goes up to a can and there's trash all over, we're in charge of containing trash.
So those are the questions I had. That's all.
Alderman Martin.
To stay on the camera issue, so they get the footage on the cameras. Do they have the manpower to go after it and follow up?
So that's what I talked to McLaughlin and Luther about, and that's where they said if they had one more officer, they would have the manpower to keep up. And that data is stored on a chip in the machine, and then they drive up with their car and they have a laptop, and it wirelessly downloads, and then they save that data and take it back. And I'll tell you, when this first started, we were getting more criminal activities caught on this video than we were trash stuff. So, I mean, it's a pretty neat device. We had gun sales, we had all kinds of stuff going on in these alleys. It was pretty cool.
I just am concerned that later on, I'll hear, well, we have the footage, but we don't have the manpower to do anything about what's caught on the footage.
I don't believe that's true. I mean, I talked to the sergeant in charge, and, actually Chairman Boyd says, hey, do we need 4 more cops? And I posed that question to him a couple of times, and they're like, no, we don't need that. What we need is one officer that gives us the flexibility to work in and out. I push pretty hard, I'm a tight guy, and I try to hold the money tight, but I pushed these guys really hard this morning. Hey, there's money on the table, and these aldermen want a solution, and this is what they came back with, so.
Thank you.
Okay, she's not on the committee, but Alderman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I came in because this is an important issue to the 20th ward, as it is for every single ward. And I want to better understand, because I have a lot of drivers, trash drivers, refuse drivers that live in my ward, and know that, when they show up to work and their quality of life is greatly reduced because they don't have a truck to drive. we're looking through this budget, Paul, can you help me understand if we increase this and we're buying the trucks, we're spending the bulk of the money on things that we're not spending money on now, if we're still gonna have this general fund subsidy? Is this going to replace the general fund subsidy to the refuse department, or is this, it seems to me like these are sort of layered needs on top of what's currently.
Yes. But what, if you look at it, what we've been seeing is an increase in our cost of the transfer station. So this year, we're gonna be over budget by about $500,000 on our transfer station disposal costs, which is something that we're gonna have in the budget in FY 18. The refuse containers, as you know, that has been solely basically funded through your ward accounts and however your discretion in terms of funding that. So that is not something that we have a citywide account to do anything with. Trash trucks, that is the major thing. As Todd mentioned, I don't know what our solution, we got such a long inventory of trash needs that I don't know if it could be a potential lease purchase as well, and given that interest rates still remain low, it might be beneficial just to get us an infusion of trucks, because we've got so many that are just 18 years old. And there are, right now, as it stands, no funds in FY 18 to replace trucks. None. Nothing in the capital fund. All the debt service there is on existing debt service agreements. And so this would be supplement to what's there now.
Do we have a breakdown of what not having those trucks is costing our city? Because we are, as Randy mentioned, running these guys on the weekends. You know, we're paying folks overtime. We have a lot of extra expense associated with not having operational fleet.
I think that number was 600,000.
Well, yeah, on the transfer station alone is 600,000, but then you've also got
Manpower hours.
the overtime,
Exactly.
the overtime associated. I didn't bring the payroll projections right now with me, but
I
is
think
it?
we normally run about 200,000, and we're gonna run about 600,000, so there's an extra $400,000 of overtime being expended. And Randy, step on me if I'm wrong, but
Right.
if we get the trucks running, we'll be able to save that $400,000 a year in overtime.
To Alderman Bosley's points with the cameras, right now, we're planning on keeping the same number of cameras, am I right? But with the additional influx of 300,000 into a camera fund a year, would we be able to expand, because 100 and, what did we say, how many cameras there are?
110.
Yeah, we bought 115 or 20, a few have been,
Yeah.
gone by the wayside, so I called about 100 that we have.
That's less than 4 per ward. I'm just functionally
They're
thinking
gonna
about
move
what
around.
the impact will be. I know I could use probably 115 in my ward alone. And is there a guarantee that we're gonna be able to use this 300,000 on an annual basis to increase the camera fleet? This is an annual revenue distribution, so I wanna see this allocated not just fiscal year 2018, but in an ongoing manner to increase the camera capacity.
You wanna speak?
Well,
there?
I think, given how the costs are broken out, for instance, one of them is an officer. Once you get the officer and you're there and recurring. I don't know about the 100,000 for the retrofit. That sounds like a one-time expense.
Right.
The rest of it's recurring, I believe.
Well, I think that gets to the whole budget process, Paul,
Right.
is, are we gonna put this 3.6 million in, you call it earmark or market for these purposes for year after year after year? I think that's where she's leaning.
Yeah, I would suggest, well, the one with the police is gonna be a little difficult because it's gonna be the police department. Everything else pretty much is gonna be in the refuse department. If you look at the prior budgets, we had actually a line item in there, and you could see purchase of truck, or the refuse, it was like a $500,000 for lease purchase. I would expect you're gonna see that going forward in future budgets, lease purchase refuse trucks. Or purchase for refuse trucks, however
So
form it takes.
This is intended to be an ongoing.
Yes.
Okay. Will this remove the need for ward capital to be spent on those trucks on an annual basis moving forward too then?
Dumpsters.
You mean on containers?
On the
Excuse
container.
me, the containers, yes.
I would say most aldermen go through more than $30,000 worth of containers.
It will significantly supplement it. Randy, what do we need, 1.2 a year, and this is 900,000.
Okay.
So you'd have 3/4 of it funded, rough numbers.
With the sale of recycling, very low, and I think it's low compared to the small bit of research I did looking at other cities. Then there are grants available for educating the public on how to recycle. You know, we get a lot of contamination in our recycling. There's, I'd like to see a program where we can educate the public through stickers and through other means to up this number and decrease the amount that we're spending on disposing garbage that could otherwise be recycled.
So, we implemented our recycling program in 2010, and when you talk about single stream, I believe you're limited to about 8% pollutants in there that the industry calls it normal. So you can have 8% trash in there. We have not had any pushback from the recycling industry that our recycling is too trashy. We had a couple issues where it was too wet, we're getting too much water in it. But we're producing a decent single stream product. As far as grants and advertising, we have the Operation Brightside, goes after grants from where, Randy? From the Solid Waste?
Solid Waste Management District.
And they get about $150,000 worth of grants a year, and they use that to educate people. Over the last few years, they put recycling in all the city buildings and that kind of thing. So they're out there doing it, maybe not enough, but they're doing it.
I know this sounds silly because it's not a huge expense, but a lot of residents are requesting stickers on the carts to describe what can be recycled and what can't, and when big bulk pickup is happening. Those stickers are extremely old, describing when pickup is occurring, and just general refuse information to residents. And I think that would go a long way, especially if we're increasing the trash fee, if we could allocate a small amount of budget for informative stickers.
So there should be a single stream recyclable sticker under every blue cart lid. That's where we put them when we deliver new carts. And there should be one on every blue dumpster. As far as bulk stickers, yeah, those are out of date, but I mean, we don't have the funding.
We put them under the lid because the machine grabs it and it'll rip the sticker off, so they are hidden under the lid.
Yeah, they're there.
Yeah, they're under the lid, that's the place.
I'll be honest with you, I never noticed.
I mean,
So,
that-
and
sorry.
have we kept up with it,
But-
Randy? Maybe we need to revisit this.
And I've got an old cannon behind my house,
Yeah.
that's fine, but people are wanting, I mean, I really do get this request very often, just to have the stickers talking about bulk pickup, your trash day is Wednesday, or what have you, and that type of thing, and a visual sticker that describes to children what can be recycled, what goes where.
Randy should be able to handle that within his budget.
I just
He
picked
needs
up
to-
another,
We've I have a dumpster.
I just picked up another 3,000 or 4,000 of those single stream stickers, so I know we're putting them out there. They're going out with
That's
every
great.
cart, every blue dumpster. And they are visual, I mean, you've seen them, they show you what can be put in there and what can't be put.
When we survey the alleys with the dumpsters, Randy, we ought to check and mark that off that they're stickered right. We may have some areas that we're missing, and we need to follow up.
And I'd add that also, it's not just a revenue item, it's an expenditure item, because the disposals for recyclables is so much less, what is it, $5 a ton or something like that?
Exactly.
Compared to $35 a ton for the regular
Exactly.
municipal waste. So it won't show up on the revenue side as much as on the expenditure side, it brings down your costs.
Yeah. And my last question is related to how many people are using the municipal refuse service as opposed to private refuse service? Do we have an audit of that?
I don't have it on the tip of my tongue, but we can get it.
The reason I'm asking is I think there are a lot of people that aren't paying for service, or at least it's an accusation often in my neighborhoods, people
You mean commercial?
that are not paying for any service and are using the services that we provide. You know, they say they've got private service and they don't, and they're using neighbors, and it causes an overage of garbage.
Randy, you're still doing the audits. Every winter, they go out and they audit the ones that are supposed to have private dumpsters to verify it. That's the only system we have out there. He sends his foreman out. We don't pick up as much trash in the wintertime, so we have a little extra time, so that's when his foremen go out and they do the survey. And they verify that there's a contract can out there where they say they're supposed to, so they're not dumping on us.
And Randy, we can follow, but if you have the percentage of St. Louis City households
Yeah, I
that
can get that
participate
for
in
you.
the St. Louis City refuse as opposed to private, I would be curious about that.
Yep.
I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions, Mr. Chairman, as this is an issue that's important to me.
Alderman Nebraska. Okay. So I have some questions. So Paul and Todd, we implemented this in 2010, correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember the promises that were made back then? What type of service we were gonna get, what it looked like?
Well, we were gonna provide recycling, and we threw out a fairly robust camera program, you know, at the request of the police department and the alderman. We bought these cameras, we invested this, I believe it was about $750,000 in cameras over a year or two, and a significant amount of money in recycling cans to put them out there and be green.
Yeah, for some reason, I remember each ward being given $100,000 and to be used to buy the recycling dumpsters and cameras. You remember that? Because I was one of the last to come online with recycling dumpsters. I used the majority for cameras. I had a concern about educating the community about the blue dumpsters and, you know, what we doing it for, how it benefits the community. And I seem to remember that there was $100,000 allocated per ward to deal with cameras in the alley and recycling dumpsters.
Yeah, I'd be misspeaking if I smoked the details about
Okay.
that. It rings a bell, but I don't remember the details on how it
And
worked.
in addition to that, we were promised that we're gonna have this trash task force. And I remember there was Sergeant Hasty, and then there were 2 officers. So there were at least 3, and they still were under capacity. And so I'm really shocked and stunned. I wish Sergeant McLaughlin was here so I could, you know, ask him more questions, because that doesn't make sense to me, that 2 officers would be enough. And the only officer that I'm familiar with is Amy Lass, who we've been introduced to. So I'm not sure who Luther is. Maybe I know him if I see him. So we've been told as aldermen, and correct me if you're on the committee, Amy Lass is the person. Okay, so who is Luther?
Luther's another guy, an officer that works for John McLaughlin, Sergeant McLaughlin, and they work together on this. So they fill in. I mentioned, so back then, we had the JAG grant, and back then, we were able to pay them a lesser fee. We didn't have to pay them an overtime rate, and that's why that worked with Ron Hasty and the additional officers. But once 13, there was some legal action, something came up where we were forced to pay them overtime, and that sucked the life out of that grant and took away the money. And that's when it kind of went to hell.
Yeah, but we weren't told that the officers were part of a grant. They were part of the program for this $11. And so we were kind of feel like we were misled. So I have issue with only having 1 officer. I'm not convinced today that we have 2, because I've only been told we have 1. I would personally like to see 4. I would like to see the numbers on what that would look like. I refuse to believe that 2 officers for just the north side is enough. And then we hear south side have some of the same problems with illegal dumping. 2 people for an entire city. Does that sound reasonable, for real?
I'm not in that profession. I don't deal with it day to day. As I mentioned earlier, I talked to the sergeant, and I talked to Luther, and I told them that this was an important issue to you, and this is where we wound up. And I mentioned my comments about that I pushed them hard, that they needed more, and they needed to speak up.
Let me ask you this, Todd. So if we have 4 police officers, and they work different shifts, one did the AM, one did the PM, we wouldn't have to pay overtime, right?
Once again, you're getting beyond my expertise,
Okay.
but, you know, these cases go and they get a lead, and they gotta chase it, right?
Okay.
Before things change, so
And then-
overtime's a big part of policing.
So let me tell you how dysfunctional it is. So behind the alley across the street from me, so we're talking between Hamilton and Rowan Avenue, between Wells and Ridge, over a month ago, I saw some people dumping. Kept circling around, I took pictures. Matter of fact, when they drove down the alley, I got behind them, I videotaped it, I took more pictures, I called 911, reported it. That was over a month ago. You know how many calls I got on that?
I'm assuming you're gonna say 0.
Exactly. 0. How is that possible?
We're getting into a defined operational issue that I can't answer right now, but I can definitely get Sergeant McLaughlin to get into the details of this and follow up with you.
And Todd, that's an experience that I think a lot of the constituents, that concern that they have, they call the police, nothing really happens. And clearly, I understand by the time the police get there, they're probably gone. But the fact that people don't get a call back suggests that there's no investigation. And so it bears no fruit to even call 911. So that's something we certainly have to work on. I understand that's not in your realm of expertise, and if we had a police officer here, he could probably defend that.
Right, and we're-
help us understand. how
Right,
we
and we're
can
getting a
do it
little
better.
beyond what's at the table here, but you deserve to have those questions answered.
Well, I don't think it's beyond the table because it's part of the money you're asking for. It's part of the justification. You're gonna pay for an officer, right? So you don't think me asking about the investigative process from a police officer is germane to this conversation?
I'm not gonna keep debating it, but, you know, you got into 911 calls and all that, but, you know, this is the best I have now. I'm not shutting you out. I think it deserves further discussion with people that are detailed into the operation, day to day. You know, I'm an operation nut, so, but I don't have the police experience, you know, so I have to rely on them and we can get that together.
Okay, Randy, I remember in Refuge, we had an educational program. Is that program no longer existing? We had someone that did educational stuff.
Like I said, the education and all that's out of Operation Brightside now, they have about, I think four people that work on that. But yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of the grants that they get is more education. It's still going out to K through 12, you know, we're still doing all that stuff.
From-
That's
But
Operation
you used to
Brightside.
have it in your house, didn't you? Didn't you used to have a person that did education? I remember visiting you some
Yeah, we
years ago.
did, right, her name was Chrissy Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
She's since left, but she's been replaced by, you know, another individual out at Brightside.
Okay, so that came out of your budget then, so you no longer fund that position?
No, it's not out of our budget, no.
Okay. Paul, here's my concern and my anxiety when we do tax increases, when we do fees. What's given to us is pretty much, this is how we're gonna spend the money. And then the money gets transferred some kind of way. I'm hearing that, you know, paying for dumpsters, we wouldn't have to out of capital. That's what I heard before the meeting. Now I'm hearing, Ty, you said it basically will supplement. Is that what I'm hearing? So how's that gonna work? Are we gonna be alleviated from having that $40,000 annually taken away out of capital? Is it gonna be part of this program, Paul?
As I said earlier, this is all you have for refuse replacement for dumpsters, because there is nothing in the citywide accounts and all. So I imagine that would be up to your individual discretion in terms of what the needs are as you evaluate, as we all do, evaluate what our capital needs are. But there are no other sources of funds for refuse container replacement. So to the extent that if this meets it, then you're fine. But if you see needs for additional, then that would be up to you, I believe.
Okay, so right now, so who's this real? Is this really your question, Todd, on the replacement of dumpsters? Is the money in here for replacement of dumpsters or is it not?
Not completely. As I mentioned, when I left streets, we were needing about 1.2 million in dumpsters and can and parts a year, and this would provide 900,000. So we would be, 25% short, 300 grand. That'd be 15,000 award short, based on those numbers that they held true, Randy. Is that about right?
Right, we got about $14 million worth of dumpsters out there. So, you know, if you divide that by, you know, a dumpster lasts about 10 years. So, you know, you're gonna have, 10% of them every year, so that's about $1.2, $1.3 million. You divide that by 28, it comes out to about 40 or 45,000, something like that.
Okay, so the almost 1.5 out of ward capital for containers and robot carts. So that's what we're looking at. That was FY16. So if we put 900,000 into this increase, then basically you would need less than, what's that, 600,000?
Yeah, if you're basing it off the 1.4 from last year, yes.
5 to 6.
So Paul, let me ask you this. If there's a savings from ward capital included in this, that would mean that we would keep more ward capital towards some other expenses. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay, so, but is that likely though?
well, I mean, you have an allocation for ward cap, that's not being affected here. So if you have something that's giving you money to pay for more refuse, then you got more money for something else.
Right, and here's the concern I have, is first of all, you're good at what you do, and you can move money around expeditiously. And what tends to happen is, when we get money to subsidize some over here, we think we're gonna get extra, but we really don't get extra, because you'll take it again next year for something else.
Let me say, and we've had this discussion on a number of different occasions, and I appreciate what you're saying. One, as a result of this is not an attempt to say, oh, we're gonna give you the 600, so we're gonna take it out the other end. That's not by design anything. Now, as you know, when we go through multiple years and recessions and things like that, you have to evaluate every year what the priorities are and what you can sustain as an operating cut and there's never a budget you can put on autopilot and say this percent, and you just go forward. You have to evaluate that each year. But no, there is no design to say, hey, we're going to give you 600,000, and then, oh, by the way, your allocation's going down. But that is not in the
I know,
this
it's just
scenario.
what happens. And I'm not trying to beat up on
No,
you.
I'm
just being realistic.
And we've had, and I
And
appreciate
being
it.
educational, because the committee members that are new, that's what happens, you have to watch it. So, for me to support this, I have to feel like my constituents will get a true benefit out of this $3 increase. From the concerns that I hear, there's a great need for a trash task force. I don't believe that 2 officers is gonna work, but I'm willing to listen to John McLaughlin, anybody else out there that can prove us wrong. I'm uncomfortable passing this out today. I think we need to have more discussion. There's information that we don't have, that you have to go back and look at. And we could do this tomorrow, if you want.
We can do this, Mr. Chairman, we can do this next week.
Okay.
And we will get the police officers here to walk through the trash task force. But I think, and a big part of it would be to eliminate how people think that really works. Since I've got it on record, you know, they can download, and it is gonna be easier today for them to download better evidence off of these cameras. But I think that we should have them in next week.
We can do that.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Next board bill up will be Board Bill 39, committee substitute. Board Bill 39. Sponsored by me, presented by the treasurer.
I'll be right over.
You could say it, but I'll slap you.
You talk about it first.
That's what I used to learn. Oh, well, we got some good info, if nothing else, you know, about the breakdown. I'm glad we got the breakdown. What did he say you were gonna do next? I wasn't paying attention. Oh, so, okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Well, I'll take hers. Thank you. You do still have some Snickers left, don't you? Who gets that? He gets that? Okay.
Yeah, he gets that.
Conway?
We always need Conway. What are you talking about? We always
Oh,
need
Brandon's
Conway.
here.
Okay, I would like to move to put Board Bill 39 committee substitute before the committee.
Second.
Is it moved in second? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Conway. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderman Kotar.
Aye.
Alderwoman Pam Boyd. Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Martin. Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Conway. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Martin.
Yes.
6 yes votes.
Okay. Jared, if you wouldn't mind, would you switch places with the treasurer? Okay, Board Bill 39 committee substitute is back before us because we missed a step in the appropriation process. what should have been included with the budget was the projected revenues as well as the capital expenditure. So everyone should have been emailed the information. Hope you had a chance to look through it, so that you can ask the appropriate questions and we can get the treasurer out of here. So with that, Madam Treasurer, I had some questions about, I'll let the committee ask questions first. Let's go down. What was that? Alderwoman Murphy?
None, I want to wait for yours.
Okay. Alderwoman Boyd
No, I'm
Okay.
looking right now.
on the Bosman.
I'm still looking.
I actually had a question about the financial empowerment office, but I kind of just slipped my mind.
We'll come back. We'll come back, no problem. Alderwoman Martin.
Not at this time.
Okay, Madam Treasurer, first of all, thank you for being here. I think it was a great opportunity for you to kind of hear some of the challenges that the city have in its overall general budget, and wrestling with the fact that there's a request to increase the fees for trash service to $3. But I want to ask you a question about the projected revenues. So the projected revenues exceed what's being budgeted, right?
That is correct.
Okay, explain, on the revenue statement, it talks about without couples.
Yes. Couples has a special relationship. The purchase of Couples was done through our component unit, St. Louis, I'm sorry. Let me get the correct. I always use the acronym.
I'm
but
sorry,
it's
I'm
the-
exhibit 12 on your handout, everybody. You should have had exhibits with your,
Right, right. We do. Thank you. I just wanted to know which one you were on.
near the back, almost the last page.
Yeah, okay, so it is the last. This one.
Okay.
Okay. Without Couples, like I said, the Couples garage was purchased by St. Louis Finance, St. Louis Parking Commission Finance Corporation. So there is a different type of ownership there. The Couples revenue is done a special way that is different from the regular parking division where it goes straight into the bond funds. And then at the end of the year, when we do the consolidation and accrual-based financials for the audit, that's when Couples comes into play. But as a normal operating revenue, it is not considered normal operating revenue because of that ownership relationship.
So it sustains itself?
It is guaranteed by a bank line of credit
Okay.
through Bank of America.
You call it the St. Louis Commission Finance Corporation?
Yes,
Is that
St.
right?
Louis Parking Commission Finance Commission.
And how long has that been around?
For a
Happened under the
while.
previous treasurer.
And it's a component unit under the treasurer's parking division.
So does it have its own set of books and everything?
It does not have its own set of financials, but because of the fact that that was the entity that purchased the garage, it has to be separated per general accepted accounting principles.
And who are the members of this corporation?
You have the members of the parking commission are on the board.
So all the parts, so with 5 people?
Yes.
Okay. So, Madam Treasurer, if you don't mind answering this particular question. So, there's almost $18 million projected revenues, but the expenses are less than that. So, what are your intentions of the other revenue?
Well, the parking division is an enterprise fund, just like the airport water division. So we don't have a balanced budget like the regular budget process. So our net change in position, which is always in the positive, we split that 60-40 with the city. That's where the 60-40 split comes from.
Okay, so the 60-40 split is already defined up front.
No, because our revenues are variable, just like any other business. We can only project what we think will happen with our monthly parking and with our event parking, based on the number of events that the Blues do every year, or Scottrade does every year, the number of events that happen with the Cardinals, our daily and monthly parking revenue. So it's a estimate, and most times that estimate comes in we estimate it very conservatively. And then at the end of the year, after our audit is finished through KPMG in October, that's when we send the bulk of the 60-40 split to the general revenue fund.
So theoretically, if there's an extra $1 million sitting out there that wasn't appropriated, the city could look at getting 400,000 of that, in theory.
In theory.
Okay. All right.
Not appropriated, meaning not estimated.
Estimate, okay. Right, okay.
You okay, Ben?
Okay, so, talk to me a little bit about, actually, let's go back to the 60-40. So you got an email a couple weeks or so ago about, I wanted to get an understanding of the methodology and how you worked through it, right? Okay. You have it?
Yes, I know.
You have the methodology, you have the example? Can you share it?
As we've spoken about before, at the end of the year, when we go from going from a cash basis.
Right, Ms. Brown, I don't mean to cut you off and be rude, but I know we've had conversation, and I think if we could look at something, we can follow it a little better. So what I was looking for is an example of fiscal year 16, the prior fiscal year, and how the calculation was made for the 60-40.
Do you have your audit report?
I don't, but what I was asking for in the email was just a simple little worksheet that we can work through. And if you don't have it right, that's okay. When do you think I can get that?
I can draft it, I can write it up for you right now if you like.
Okay, that would be nice, because you have the information with you.
Yeah, I have it right here.
Okay, thank you. And I got the information on the financial statements, and I know there's stuff that's put in Excel spreadsheet, then there's stuff that's put in, what you said, the Ames computer, right?
All of our financial data goes through the Ames system, yes.
So the budget, for example, all these are the accounting codes to the right, basically, the line items for those expenditures, right?
Right.
So in the Ames system, is it set up that way?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we can't get just a few pages that kind of shows expenses and revenues?
Like I indicated in the email, the total monthly report is 200 pages.
Right.
We go through different types of reconciliations in Excel to kind of do some things, but if you would like to see an example of the Ames report, we can print out some pages for you.
Okay, that'll be helpful, just so I can clearly understand how this works. So when we pass this budget, then you send it over to the comptroller's office, and then they put in all the appropriations based on the line items?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And then what happens throughout the year if there's a need to adjust line items?
What happens throughout the year, I'm sorry?
If there's a need to make adjustments to the line items?
As we prepare vouchers that are our expenditures, if we are if we are exceeding that appropriation, then the comptroller's office lets us know that we are exceeding that and we need to transfer funds to accommodate those types of things.
Okay. So do you know, as of right now today, how much in revenue the parking division has?
We sent you the report through April. We are still in the process of closing May. So I do not have a final number for you at this moment.
Would you say that you're in a good position, great position?
Yes, we are still trending where we were in April, which was a good position.
Okay. I just had a chance to look over it last night. So it looks like, so for example, if I look at the scorecard for April, tell me if I'm reading this right. Do you have it with you?
I do.
Okay. If we go all the way down to the bottom, it says total revenue, actual 16,383,611.
Yes.
And total expenses is 8,849,102.
Yes.
So right now, the position just for April is the excess revenue is 7,534,000.
You have to also consider this is purely cash basis operating, which is why we keep talking about the conversion from cash to accrual. This does not include any depreciation. It doesn't include the debt service or any of those types of things, which is why we have to go through the process that we do at the end of the year to prepare the audit financials so that the 40% is calculated accurately.
The debt service, when is the debt service due?
The debt service is due twice a year, the 15th of June and the 15th of December.
The 15th. So there's one more. So what's the debt service due? So for this month, it's been paid already.
Yes, June would have been paid already.
About how much was that?
I don't have those numbers with me,
There
I'm
were
sorry.
several.
But it's several different bonds.
Aggregately, best guess.
I'd rather not say
Okay.
until I know.
Okay. I'm gonna go back around the committee. Alderman Murphy?
No, you asked. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Asked and answered.
Alderman Boyd is not here. Alderman Bosley.
Yeah, I think he asked a lot of questions too. I just got a quick question. I just think it'll help. I might not be the only person in the room thinking. I'm not sure. I know at one of the other meetings that we had, it was said that the church's office had a substantial amount of money kind of saved up. So I was just wondering, if over time, do you think it'd be possible for, I guess the grosses that you all have after operating expenses for us to possibly use the extra funding for, I guess, other things? I think that's kind of been asked before also.
Right, so according to state law, we can only give 40% to the general revenue fund. However, we are currently in discussions with the comptroller's office to see how we can assist with the Scottrade project. As you're aware, as the bonds are currently structured, it would take $1.5 million initially from the general revenue fund, which would take money directly away from city services. So we've been in discussion with the comptroller's office, with our investment bankers, our financial advisors, to see how we can take some of the burden off of that project, because the Scottrade Center is nearly a third of our revenue. So if Scottrade fails, the treasurer's office fails. And if the treasurer's office fails, then, we won't be able to give as much to the city general revenue fund because it directly affects our operations. So we're in discussion to see how we can work together on maybe a joint project to use some of a combination of incremental parking revenue and also a portion of our reserves to help that project.
That's good. Yeah, and I just wanted to know, because it's good to know, if the money's just sitting wet, you know, what are the ideas that it could possibly be used for, or what avenues you all are actually, I guess, researching or
Right.
looking at to be able to, you know, just, we all helping each other, so just.
Right, and it puts us in a position that if there are any other projects throughout the city to build garages in other neighborhoods, it puts us in a position to be able to finance that debt at a lot cheaper rate than the city currently does, because our credit is rating higher because of our debt reserve position.
So from my understanding, like, the city's credit rating is different from the treasurer's credit rating?
Yes, they're rated independently,
Okay,
yes.
understood. So
And
that's
ours
why
was
it's-
recently upgraded.
Understood. So that's why it's good to have that extra amount of money in there, because you all can utilize it to have some type of equity
Exactly,
for your own projects.
exactly.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a better understanding of it, because, you know, when I first heard, that's a lot of money, you know, so that's all.
Right.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Alderman Martin.
No.
Okay, Treasurer, the last time we spoke at a hearing, I had asked a question about the percentage of reserves and how's that calculated. And your response was the financial advisor gives you that information. Were you able to get that information from your financial advisor on your reserves should be about what percentage of your operating?
So, yes, I did not receive an email from him. Have you, Jared? But what we did was looked at the industry, and the industry has about 220 days average debt service coverage on their existing debt, and also to cover their expenses should something catastrophic happen. And we are well over that. But also, there is a coverage ratio that's recommended of 2.0, and the treasurer's office is at 1.99. And I'm sorry, but our financial advisor did not send me that in writing, and as soon as he does, I'll send that to the rest of the committee.
Okay, thank you. And so I want to go back to what Alderman Wise asked. So the 23 million that you have right now, it's not really projected for anything except maybe on the help out with the Scott trade, is that correct?
I'm sorry.
You're not projected to spend that on any capital expense except potentially the Scott trade?
I can't say that definitively. You never know what other
I mean, come on,
projects
as
will
of
come
today,
up.
but as of today.
I really can't say that definitively, because you never know what other projects may come up. We are always getting approached for other projects that may or may not come to fruition. So we've been approached to build a facility in the Grove. We've been approached to build a facility in the Kingsway project. We've been approached to build a facility in Cortex. You know, all of these are, you know, just kind of general discussions, but you know, nothing has come to fruition. And even the Scottrade project, we're still in an infancy stage of looking at what those possibilities are. So, like I said, we can't say definitively it's only for Scottrade.
Okay, so it's just stuff that's in conversation, just like Scottrade, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty, that's practically all the questions I have, but I did want to bring to your attention one of the amendments to the bill, and that's section 12. Do you have a copy of the committee substitute, Madam Treasurer?
They said it was sitting right here.
Yeah, does it say committee substitute on the top of it?
Yes.
Okay, so we added a new section 12, and in section 12 it says all line item budget modification and travel shall be approved by the parking commission.
Do you have that?
I see it.
Okay. And can you tell me when the next parking commission meeting is?
They are usually every other month.
Okay, if there's a request to have them monthly, is there a problem with having them monthly?
I would ask, why do we need a monthly meeting? We don't have a lot of business to discuss. That's why we pushed them to every other month.
Right. Well, one of the reasons I have them every month is that there's a financial report that's produced every month, and the commission should have access to see the financial report to see what kind of position that the parking division is in. So that's one major reason. I mean, we do have a responsibility at the parking commission to know what's going on. Would you agree?
That's true. We can provide that report every month, but whether or not it garners discussion, I mean, is totally up to the commission. But I mean, if you want a copy of what we review every month, that's not a problem.
What I'm asking is, to have a monthly parking commission meeting, and you never know what conversation comes up. Almost every commission within the city of St. Louis meets monthly. Some of them, it's real quick, like typically the parking commission meetings have been, maybe it's a half an hour, and some of them may be as long as 2 hours. If you're on a planning commission or airport commission, it may last longer. I've talked to other commissioners, and I want to get assurance from you that we will have monthly parking commission meetings.
We will have monthly parking commission meetings.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm going to make a motion to add more language to section 12. And the amendment goes like this. Any payments required by the appropriations herein shall be made in accordance with the policy and procedures imposed by the comptroller. And we can have further conversation about that on the amendment. I move that we adopt amendment number 1 to Board Bill 39 Committee Substitute.
I'm sorry, can I ask what that is referring to? What your amendment is referring to?
It's referring to, well, first of all, there's a motion on the floor.
Second.
It's been second. So it's been moved in second. That has to do with, however your finances are being governed over there, it will be governed in accordance with the standards of the comptroller's office.
They already are.
Okay, so it may not make a big impact. But there was a request to have that language added, and I didn't see a problem with it. And it sounds like you don't have a problem with it because it's already been done.
They already are, just seems duplicative is my.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I have a request for previous roll. Is there any objection to previous roll? Okay, amendment number 1 is adopted to Board Bill 39 Committee Substitute. I move that Board Bill 39 Committee Substitute as amended is passed out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Is there
I'm sorry.
objection to previous roll? Hearing no objection, Board Bill 39 Committee Substitute comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
I'm sorry, there
There are some errors.
Oh,
are some errors in the bill that Michelle is pointing out.
I'm sorry, let's back up. You want to point it out? Hmm?
Yeah, we're a little.
Board Bill 39 Committee Substitute, where's the error?
The error, the first paragraph, the wording says 17,076,372, but the numbers are wrong if you look in the comma, the parentheses.
Ooh, so the comma's off.
And that number, actually, the 17,076,372 is incorrect.
What should it be?
Should be 17,061,372, because if you add the operating budget, which is also incorrect in the number parentheses.
The operating,
The wording is correct, but the number is incorrect. It should be 15,531,322. And if you add
it
the
should be 50,531,000?
531,322, which is what your wording says.
50,500,000, yes. Okay, thank you.
And if you add that to the capital, that is why the total should be 17,061,372.
17,061,000.
372.
17,000,006. What did these numbers come from? 17 million.
Oh, it shouldn't be any.
So if you add the 15 million, let's go back to the previous board. So if you add the 15,546,322 to the capital budget, which was submitted, right?
15,000,005, I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Okay, the original amount was 15,546,322 for
That was the
operating.
original, yes.
Right,
And then
okay.
that's been decreased by 15,000.
Right,
So it should be 15,531,322.
okay. 15,546,322. Okay, and then add,
And then if you add the capital,
the capital, which is 1,530,000,
yes.
$50.46.
And can we remove the cents, because the cents aren't in any other sections?
Right. How would you know
They're in the middle of the section.
In every other section, we
Gotcha.
round the numbers.
that? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
15, 5, 3, 1, 3, 2, 2. No. Okay, so that is a calculation, take that out. Okay. All right, I move, having voted on prevailing side, I move to
Mr. Chairman,
reconsider. Go
It's
ahead.
also line 21.
Okay,
It should be 80. It says 8. It's the last word.
108?
The word says 8, but it should be 80.
line what?
21.
21, the very last word.
That 9,181,000.
And actually, that number is incorrect. I was gonna say that once we got past the first paragraph.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Barr.
The number on line 22, because that is the budget that was reduced by the 15,000.
Gotcha.
That number should be 9,166,421.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
9,166,421.
Okay. Anything else?
No, can I just ask that you can repeat that back so I make sure it's
Sure.
correct? I'm sorry.
So what you're asking, we'll bring it back in a motion, okay?
Okay.
So you're saying line 14 should be 17,061,372.
Yes,
Take the cents out,
take the cents out.
okay? And you're also line 15, 15,531,322.
Yes,
Line 17, $1,530,050.
yes,
Take the cents out. Line 22, $9,166,421.
yes.
Anything else?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, having voted on the prevailing side, I move that we reconsider Board Bill 39 committee substitute as amended.
Second.
It's moved in second. Any objection to previous roll? Okay, what's back before us is Board Bill 39 committee substitute as amended. I make a motion that we amend, this will be amendment number 2, on Board Bill 39 committee substitute to reflect line 14 should read 17,061,372. Line 15 in parentheses should read 15,531,322. Line 17 shall read in parentheses $1,530,050. Line 22 in parentheses shall read $9,166,421. We got that? Okay, so it's been moved, seconded. Any objection to previous roll? A Board Bill 39 committee substitute comes out of committee as amended for the due pass recommendation. I'm sorry, that's not right. And then we have to vote on this. I move that Board Bill 39 committee substitute as amended comes out of committee with due pass recommendation. It's been moved and second. Any objection to previous roll? Okay, Board Bill 39 committee substitute as amended comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Thank you. So, Madam Treasurer, the next parking commission meeting would be the first Monday in July, first Thursday?
I'm not sure.
It's always the what date in the month?
I'm not in front of my calendar, so I don't know.
Okay,
It's usually the second Thursday.
second Thursday, okay. So potentially the second Thursday in July is the next meeting.
Yeah, I have to check my schedule.
Okay, and, so we will have, Michelle, can you send me? The financial report that, from the AIM system, so I can get a look at it. I know it's 200 pages or whatever, but that's fine. Can I get it tomorrow?
You want the whole report?
Yeah.
I'll send it to you by PDF.
Great, all right. And the other question, Madam Treasurer, is there any way that the parking commission can help the city out with the trash issue, with the trash task force, for example, or any other services that the city may have?
Like I explained to earlier to Alderman Bosley, a lot of our, when we take a look at our reserves, we use them for revenue producing projects. And the reason why we have such a high reserve is so we can, if we have other large projects to finance, then we use that as a good debt position as we go out to market for those bonds. So, it's already on the table that we have, it's not the best solution to, raise money through increasing trash fees. I'm personally not happy about it myself, but I don't think that it's a good use of reserves for one-time purchases like that. I think it has to be, in my opinion, I think it should be something that's revenue producing, and that serves, and that is revenue producing. That's just my personal opinion on how we should use how we should use reserves. Because it's a one-time thing, and this is going to be a continuing cost over years for our refuse department. So we need to take a look at our entire budget and see where we can trim fat in other places.
Right, and Paul is probably one of the best at doing that. But let me ask you this, but can the parking division fund, for example, the trash task force this year or this next forthcoming year? Can they fund a special project in another department?
I don't think that's a prudent use of reserve funds.
Well, reserves is based on, you get to a level of reserve based on deciding how much money will go over in it, or is it automatic? Whatever you didn't spend automatically goes to reserve?
Whatever we don't spend, whatever, after the 60-40 split, 60% automatically goes to fund our reserves.
Would you be willing to work on a way of being able to transfer more money?
We'd have to go to the state legislature for that. That's state law. State law says no more than 40% shall go to the city's general revenue.
Would you support that, if we went to the state to change the allocation?
I can't say I would support it or not.
All right, because the city is looking at, like it's $3, ways of being able to, deliver better city services. And I certainly respect, 23 minutes, first of all, it's awesome, it's phenomenal to have that kind of reserves in there. So you certainly, and you and your staff should be commended for being able to accumulate such a large amount of reserves. But I'm just looking at ways.
With all due respect, so does the airport and the water division have a large number of reserves too. I brought that up in previous committee meetings.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up because it made me do some homework. And so when I went to the water department and I asked them about the reserves, I think they told me it was like 16 million.
34.
34 million.
Because I invested.
And they have $1 billion worth of assets out there they have to deal with in case of a catastrophic.
And but they don't touch their reserves. When I got to the treasurer's office, they weren't, that money wasn't even being invested and they weren't earning money on it. And I have convinced them since to at least give half of it to be invested so they can earn money on it. If you have that much sitting in reserves, it is irresponsible to put it in a non-interest bearing checking account. The airport is the same, and the city itself has about $7 million in reserves.
Yeah, that's pretty sad though, isn't it?
And it is below the position where it should be according to our rating agencies.
Yeah.
But like I said before, we should be taking a look at the entire financial picture if we're really going to be talking about how we deliver better services to the city. Nobody wants to talk about the L word, which is layoffs. Nobody wants to talk about how we can use technology to better make sure that we are using technology to make sure we are delivering services efficiently and effectively. There are a lot of places where, just me personally, I've seen where we can use technology to increase the services that we provide. Accounting being one of them, we've been waiting to upgrade the accounting system so we can be able to print out those reports that you are asking for rather than keeping it on an Excel spreadsheet. So, there are in my opinion, when you have a budget this big, we need to be really scrutinizing everything, not just, looking for more trash trucks and taxing people for more trash trucks.
I think you bring up a very good point. And would you be willing to work on a resolution to explore the financials of the city departments on where monies is being invested? 'Cause that is your responsibility to invest money for the city, right?
Right.
Would you be willing to work on a project that does take a look at
Right.
all the
I'll
departments?
take it a step even further. There's this book that I just bought called Peak Performance, and it's the story about how Denver, under the leadership of their mayor, my good friend of mine, Michael Hancock, took a look at every city department and got employees involved, making sure that they can request ways to save money in every city department. And I think that's the exercise that should be done. Not just, looking at this office in a silo. So it should be a citywide effort, and I think we would benefit from all maybe reading that book and taking on that as a year-long project.
But just from the financial aspect, what's within your authority? I'm curious to, get a report from you of how well we're doing in those departments. Like you're saying, they didn't have, they had a check and had money in a no interest bearing checking account. That's ridiculous.
Right.
So those type of findings to kind of help make our finances overall.
Well, with all due respect, that's not under my purview. That is the comptroller's job to audit the city departments. And we have done whatever we can in the treasurer's office to make sure that we are leaner, that everybody that shows up to work is actually working, that we don't have any ghost employees or phantom employees that are people that are on the job not doing anything. We've also saved over, $5 million over my first term, changing our processes and making them more efficient and effective by refunding or refinancing our existing debt, by going to direct deposit, by changing our custodial relationships with our banks, and we're in the process of looking at all of our banking relationships to see if we're getting charged the right amount of fees and renegotiate that as well. So we've already been pushing.
Thank you. I'll call you. We'll sit down and talk about some other strategies of, how we can grow the revenues for the city of St. Louis.
Right, and I believe the comptroller has a committee on revenue, right there, that revenue committee that she called.
Is that fund committee?
No, it was.
It's an ad hoc
It's an
committee.
ad hoc committee that she put together to take a look at our revenue position in the city. You may want to give her a call as well to see how you can be helpful in that process. Because we've been at, maybe one or so meetings for that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's been very helpful. I appreciate you coming to the hearing today.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to the next parking commission meeting. Okay, we'll resume the street committee. Next board bill up is Board Bill 62, sponsored by Alderman Ogilvy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is an alley vacation, or a partial alley vacation. Clifton Park in the Clifton Heights neighborhood. There is an alley that dead ends into the park on top of a hill. And it's a strange situation because there's also, decades ago, there was a street, sort of a paper street, as they call them. Houses were built on that
paper street?
It's there, the right of way is there on paper, but there's no street in real life.
I had a paper alley. I know.
There's houses built on that street, so they front the park, but they actually have no right of way. So the front of their house is the park, although there is almost access to those houses, to one house in particular from this alley. The vacation, we're vacating the end of this alley, turning it over to that one home so that homeowner can build a garage, so they have some access for parking, which they don't have right now because you can't just park in the alley, and they do not live on a street. There is no street they can park on. So that is, so they did the survey, all the other neighbors are fine, and there was really only a single property that this affects, and it's the homeowner who's requesting this alley vacation.
Okay. Alderwoman Murphy,
It sounds fine, sounds fine. I had a paper alley one time too, so I know what you mean.
Alderwoman Boyd,
No questions.
Alderman Bosley,
No questions.
Alderwoman Martin.
No questions.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to pass Board Bill 62 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
So moved.
It's been
Second.
moved and second by Alderman Bosley. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Conway, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Murphy,
Aye.
Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Boyd, Pam Boyd,
Here.
Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Bosley,
Yes.
same thing? Okay.
Did you say anything?
It was coming.
Yeah, there we go.
Alderwoman
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Chairman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Conway, Alderman Moore, Alderman Kotar, 5 yes votes.
Okay, Board Bill 62 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation. Next Board Bill.
Thanks, everyone.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir, 65, sponsored by Alderman Bosley. You put on stage and you're seated.
Yeah, I don't know. It's first week. Figuring it out.
You okay? You
All right.
fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, everybody. This is for an alley vacation. We have a church called the Jubilee Church off Grand and Quarter. They're looking to do some expansions. They want to look into developing and really becoming an anchor in the community. Right there at Grand and Quarter, we only have a Family Dollar. We've got a bank right across the street, and a lot of buildings that are falling apart the block over. And a lot of times our churches talk about being involved in the community and don't really actually take a stake. They just have a church there, and then they go to their respective homes that are outside the actual community where the churches are. So the pastor here lives in the community. The community is in support of this church in particular, and I'm supporting any projects that they would like to do that benefit the community, because it's not enough churches in the community taking a stake where the people community. So I am, looking to get support on this, helping them get their project up and going and getting this alley built.
Okay, Alderwoman Murphy.
No questions. It's your ward, and I'm sure your folks know what they want and know what they need.
Alderwoman Boyd.
I support.
Okay, Alderwoman Martin.
I support it.
Okay. We did that. I'll entertain a motion to pass Board Bill 65 out of committee with due pass recommendation.
So moved.
Been
Second.
moved and second. Any
Previous
objection to
roll?
previous roll? Hearing no objection to previous roll, Board Bill 65 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, that will be the last bill. Other
Okay,
bills
okay.
must be held by Alderwoman Davis.
And Vaquero and Boyd, everybody. You got one?
And that,
Oh, that's your old.
Streets Committee is adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Did you?